Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Sarah Reynolds-Lasser, Senior Director of Business Development for Aspen Chamber Resort Association. As part of Guest Service Appreciation Month in October, we are pleased to be presenting specific tools and resources for our members, especially those in hospitality, so that they might welcome guests and community members who are traveling or visiting or in our community already on the autism spectrum. And I'm pleased to introduce Shelley McLaughlin, and she works in partnership and as a consultant with Ascendigo here in the Valley. And I am pleased to turn it over to her to continue on with the presentation and share some great information with us all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am very excited to be able to speak to you today for two different reasons. One is I worked in hotels and restaurants and in the hospitality industry for a very, very long time until my son was diagnosed with autism. And then it just got to be that 24/7 lifestyle just got to be a little bit too much for our family. And I came home and started being a different kind of mom for a different kind of kid. And that was a long time ago. He is now 26 years old and he is doing well. And he works in the hospitality industry in fast food restaurants and is the #1 French fry guy at the new Maryville store here in Tennessee. So I'm working on this grant with Ascendigo and I love working on this grant. It has been actually therapeutic for me to go back and revisit all of the fears associated with having a child that might engage in wandering and elopement, and then work toward solutions that will help make that better for communities moving forward. So I appreciate the opportunity that Sarah has given us to be able to speak to you today. I am going to tell you two things. One, I'm not super technologically inclined, so hopefully this will all work out okay with doing the Zoom slide. Let me get it going. And then the second thing is that I have recently moved to Tennessee and there are new allergens that I'm getting used to. So if I start coughing, that's a good time for you to ask a question. What we're going to talk about today is about autism, how that impacts individuals when they're traveling, not only members that live in the community, but individuals when they're traveling, and what you all might be able to do to help make their visit to Aspen safer and better, or be able to engage with the members of your community that have autism differently than you did before today. So the reason that we are interested in working on this particular issue with regard to wandering and elopement is because individuals with autism are 3 times more likely to die from an injury just in general. And under the age of 15, it's 40 times more than that. Approximately 50% of individuals that have autism will wander. And so pretty much most of them at some point or another will wander or elope to get away from their caregivers or their parents or their school. And it is really bad when that occurs because there is a high rate of lethality within an hour of them getting out from underneath those people's care. At the same time, it is very important for us to work with our individuals with autism to help them to learn how to navigate the community safely. And we need them to do that because they're going to grow up and they're going to become adults, and they're going to need to work in places of employment or go to the community events that are happening and live their best life. And they're going to want to run errands that are important to them or that need to be done. They're going to need to go to medical appointments. They'll need mass transportation, and their parents may not always be with them. So they're going to have to learn these skills. And it's something that is constantly on the forefront of a parent's mind, is to work to increase independence. It's very important. And if you can't go outside your house, it's really super hard to be independent. Just some quick stats about individuals when they do wander and why this pertains to you all, and this will come up later in our presentation, is that about 39% of the incidents occur during transition or commotion or stress. So when you have guests that are coming in that are transitory guests that are coming in for a week or two, or the summer or the winter, to come and visit Aspen, they are not going to be in their traditional environment. They can get very stressed out with regard to that. And that is when an elopement is likely to occur. The other part of this pie that impacts hoteliers in particular is because they like to wander between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m., which is when their parents like to possibly sleep. A lot of our families are very sleep deprived because we kind of sleep with one eye open. So about 80% of the incidences where autism is going to occur, oh, and 13% happen when they're playing outside or when you're doing outdoor activities, which you do a good bit of those in Aspen too. So I would say somewhere between 80 and 85% of the environments that encourage wandering are going to be taking place in your community and in your local settings. Also, it turns out there is an organization that we partner with or are working with as part of this grant, and they are the National Autism Association, and they started tracking the incidence of wandering and elopement in children, and then also tallying the lethal outcomes that occurred in those wanderings. And so with regard to hotels, even though that number looks low, about 50% of the children who wandered or eloped from a hotel or vacation home had a lethal outcome, and stores had about a 13% lethal outcome, stores or restaurants. And so when they get out and get away, again, there's a very, very good chance that they may meet with a lethal outcome. So this is kind of a life or death situation, and that's why we are working on it. It is terrifying as a parent to turn around and realize you got distracted for half a second, or you were dealing with another child, or you know, you had to take a shower. That's when it happened for me once, that my kid got out of the house and ran down the street while I was getting ready to go to work. So it can happen at any time. It doesn't mean that they're bad parents. It doesn't mean that they are not attentive to their children. That's usually quite the opposite. Usually they're a little bit more helicopter parents than even other parents. And they need a lot of help when this all goes down. And so we're going to talk about how you can help today. And we are pleased as we can be to be part of this grant award Ascendigo obtained a couple of years ago. And if you look on this map, you can see that it's the only one right here pretty much in the mountain states. It's a rural mountainous community. And so we have tried to incorporate that type of setting into the way that we present our material and how to tell law enforcement and emergency responders, first responders, how to look out for our kids and find them. It's very different than when you're in an urban setting like Houston or Los Angeles or Miami or New York or Boston. So we feel like we've contributed a good bit to the scope of this award. This grant came about because of two young men who wandered and eloped. One of the young boys' name was Kevin, and he escaped from his family home in the middle of the night, and he went straight for the Raccoon River in Iowa, and he drowned in that river. The other little boy, his name was Avante Akendo, and he was at school. He was in a classroom with two teachers and a paraprofessional. He left his room and went down the hall. He went past the school security guards and a couple of parents before he finally went out of the door that was propped open. And he was found several months later in the East River and had also drowned. So this again is a very, very serious condition. It's actually a medical condition that is diagnosable by a physician, and it can be treated. There are behavioral treatment programs that can work to reduce incidence of autism, wandering and elopement, that's paid for by insurance and Medicaid once the medical diagnosis has come through. So this is pretty heavy duty stuff. So what is autism in the first place? I don't know if you know somebody with autism or you have a person with autism in your family. but it can impact people in a bunch of different ways. So all of these things that are around this big circle right here are all things that individuals with autism may have. And autism is a spectrum disorder, so someone can be very mildly affected by any of these particular things, or they can be very significantly impaired with these things. They may or may not have an intellectual disability. They may or may not be able to communicate with verbal communication. All their behavior is communication, and a lot of times our quote unquote nonverbal children also have other ways to voice their opinions about different things. So it's a culmination of a bunch of different symptoms. It impacts kids and adults completely differently. And it can be a little bit difficult to identify at first, but once you learn the signs of it, you can start to recognize it pretty easily. Some of the things that we're going to talk about today, which impact wandering and elopement specifically, are sensory processing issues, as well as verbal and nonverbal communication, information processing, and executive functioning skills. So those are all things that everyone has to grow and learn how to do, but individuals with autism have a little bit more of a difficult time with those things because they may not filter out to be able to focus on what's most important at the time. So we're going to talk about that and how sensory processing disorder might impact something like that. We also just wanted you to know real quickly that the other reason that this is such a significant issue, not only in the Aspen community, but throughout the United States and indeed the world, is because autism is increasing at an extremely high prevalence. And so I left this graphic on here. We just used this graphic to train sheriffs across Colorado earlier this year. And at that point, it was 1 in 44, but they've released a new report. So now it's 1 in 54. So now they've released a new report, and it's 1 in 44 children under the age of 14 that are diagnosed with autism. And the rate for individuals who are adults is 1 in 88. There are 4 times as many boys that are diagnosed as girls. It crosses all races, cultures, ethnicities. It doesn't matter what someone's socioeconomic background is. They can be very, very wealthy, and they can be extremely poor. And there are a number of health comorbidities that can accompany autism. So it's not just a mental health or a behavioral health disorder. It also often has a number of different significant health impairments, including seizures or gastrointestinal issues that can be very severe, as well as some mental health issues like OCD and anxiety and depression, and not real great sleeping, which means other people in the house experience not real great sleeping a lot of times. And approximately, approximately 50,000 kids move into adulthood in the United States every single year. And when they do that, they lose important access to medical treatments, and they also lose their school-based autism services. And so they're kind of hanging out there. So we're going to tell you what you might be able to do to help with that. These are some signs of individuals that have autism at any age. One of the primary signs is that they have difficulty with eye contact. They have trouble looking you directly into the eye. Even if they appear to be looking at your eyes, a lot of times they'll be focused on your mouth or your forehead instead of your eyes, once they've learned that they have to face you when they talk to you. Approximately 1/3 of individuals are nonverbal. Sometimes they have selective hearing. They may or may not respond if you call their name. They can get very upset by minor changes in routine, and minor changes in routine are a requirement for traveling. They have a tendency to repeat phrases over and over. You may ask them a question. They may respond with a phrase from their favorite Disney movie, which over the years, it has been my experience with my son that sometimes that's how he's expressing himself. So all of a sudden, if he starts talking like Woody from Toy Story, then I try to listen to what Woody's problem is instead of saying, oh, he's just talking to me like Woody from Toy Story, or Ariel from The Little Mermaid, who's his current go-to, because he's interested in maybe pursuing a relationship with a redhead. So if anybody has any connections there, just let us know. Just a quick shout out for me. Just kidding. Anyway, they can perform repetitive behaviors such as flapping or rocking or spinning. These are called stimming behaviors, and they do it a lot of times to help calm themselves down or to help regulate. So if you've ever been really excited and you do like this yourself, that's what you may see a person with autism doing, just to try to self-regulate how they're feeling. They may avoid or seek touch interactions that seem inappropriate. So for example, when we were training law enforcement officers, and these kids really like Woody, they may want to reach for your badge, and that might not be something that you would want anyone to do, is reach for your badge or your real cool shiny gun. But you need to know those things, that they may just reach out and touch you, or they may shrink back if you try to reach out to them. And again, some have intellectual disability and some don't. And just because they don't talk doesn't mean that they don't understand what you are saying necessarily. I am not going to play this video, but Sarah's going to send this PowerPoint. I'm going to take one quick sip of this. Sarah's going to send this PowerPoint back out to you. And I really, really highly recommend that you review this video when it comes out. I don't think it'll play exactly right over the Zoom experience, but it's a video of a little kid that's walking through a mall. And I'm really glad that we use this to demonstrate what it might be like for an individual to experience a sensory overload. I used to bring my son to the food court at the mall because it was literally, for me, the worst place on earth. I couldn't stand going there. We had a big carousel in the middle of it, and they had these very blowy air conditioners there. We lived in Louisiana at the time, and there were 100 different smells coming from all the different food court restaurants, and yelling and crying babies and the loud carousel, and it was just a lot of chaos. And I thought, if we can make it here, if I can get him to sit in a chair and eat something here, then we can go to a quieter restaurant and have a better time. So I get a little sad every time I watch this video, because I don't know if that was a good parenting thing to do to him or not, but it will give him good, honest material to talk to a therapist about in his 30s, just like everybody else has to go to a therapist when they're in their 30s. Okay, so that is what autism is, and that is why we are even talking to you today. It is a issue that is prevalent in all communities across the United States and across the world. Our families are often, they hang back in their houses and they don't go on vacations a lot of time. Some because of financial reasons, because a lot of the money goes towards helping the kid and the family. But also because it's just really daunting to travel with a person with autism at first. Not because they can't do it, but probably because of latent trauma that the parent has experienced when they've had difficult, critical situations where the child has gotten away from them. So you have an incredible resource right there in the Roaring Fork Valley called Ascendigo, and they were founded in 2004 by parent Sally Bernard, who lives right there in Aspen. And they do an incredible service there in the community to work with these kids and to push them to their limits and to bring kids in from other places so that they can experience camp there. They work on employment. And so we're going to touch on that a little bit too, and how that might pertain to you guys. But they are just incredible. And again, this is a fantastic video that explains who they are and all of the wonderful things that they do. And the things that they've done for kids all across this country. And I encourage you to watch that too. As part of, I am so sorry, I keep coughing. I knew this was going to happen. Sorry. Okay. As part of this grant, this is how Ascendigo is helping in the Roaring Fork Valley in Colorado. And then we'll have a way to help people all across the country after this grant has been completed. We have been working on developing our program, which we call our spectrum of safety. So just like autism is in a spectrum, we want our individuals to have a spectrum of safety. So we are teaching parents and caregivers who are at the core of the spectrum of safety. It's almost like 3 circles that go out. And parents and caregivers are the first line of defense to be able to make sure that the person with autism is safe and in a safe environment, and that they're watched. The second circle out is more school, employer, clinics. If the child goes to church or to activities out in the community. So we want community awareness there, where they spend the majority of their time, which is probably school or clinic, to make sure that they know about this issue and what to do in the case of an emergency. And then beyond that, law enforcement and first responder training. Once it gets outside of law enforcement and first responders, kids are really at risk and on their own, and searches can take a very long time and usually have pretty bad outcomes. So we're building this out. We're developing e-learning modules. We're training people in person. We will be able, if you have a hotel and you want a security staff to come in, and you want us to come in and train your security staff or your front office staff or anything, we're totally able to do that and happy to do that. And we're happy to be able to work with any community on public awareness campaigns like Sarah's allowing us to do today. And I think we had a question from Heather. So Heather has a question. And you're on mute.
Heather, I've just asked you to unmute. If you can do that on your end, and you have the ability to speak. You could also put the question in the chat, but happy to take that question live.
Hello, I think it must be a different Heather, because I'm a Heather, but I don't have a question at this point.
Okay, you have okay, you had the hand raise function, but I'll go ahead and lower that. All right,
Sorry.
No worries, back to Shelley. Any other questions while we've paused? All right, back to you, Shelley.
Okay. So we also are, as we move through this process, we have provided these different law enforcement agencies or schools with ways to change their policies and their procedures. And we can also help consult if anybody is interested in that. So if you're a hotel and you want to find a way to change employee policies and procedures and incorporate that, or incorporate training into your program, then we're happy to do that. Or work with the broader Aspen community to work on some different projects that can help make things safer for people with autism. So how does this all relate to Aspen? I was very excited to see that you all have such a very nice Aspen pledge, and figured that you guys probably have taken that pledge. And there were 3 points within that I thought were really good, which were, I will prepare for any experience, which is a really high target, especially when you're working with the autism population, because they are completely full of surprises and you never know when something is going to happen or what it's going to be. So I commend you for being prepared for any experience. That is a tall order. And accepting differences and celebrating the diversity within the community. There is nothing but differences and diversity within the autism spectrum community. And one of our favorite things to say is, if you've met one person with autism, then you have met one person with autism. There are very rarely 2 people alike. There can be shared commonalities, but they are very unique individuals. Every single one of them is like a snowflake. And to be kind to community members. And that is a huge, huge, wonderful thing. One of the things that I had worked with on my son initially, outside of learning his ABCs and how to sit in a chair and to identify his colors and say what our names were, was to just focus in on learning how to be a kind person. Because regardless of your level of functioning and executive functioning, if you are a kind person, people will help you, or are more inclined to help you. that has been our experience with him. And conversely, I have to say, since we've just recently moved here to Tennessee, it's a little small town that we're living in now. It's very different than the big city we were living in Louisiana in a lot of ways. And everyone here is really kind. And we were out in the community last night. We were in a corn maze, going through a corn maze, and people were jumping out and scaring us. And Liam got really scared, and they recognized that something was different about Liam, and took their masks off and helped us talk him down a little bit, which was actually very sweet after they had scared the out of him. So that was good. And it was good that they had an awareness that there are special people who may be going through their facility. So one of the ways that you can help with addressing these things is preparing a safe and hospitable environment for ASD individuals. We're going to talk about that in a second. Also, raise awareness with your employees about neurodiverse individuals and how they can be supported, whether they are permanent members of the Aspen community or transient community members, since you all have a high amount of people who are moving through the area. Hold on, I hit the wrong thing. I can't see what this says underneath here. Okay, there's another point on there, but I can't see it. I can't get this bar to move. Oh, to create an autism-friendly community. And there's a bunch of different ways that you can do that. You all have some great events that take place that Ascendigo helps organize too, throughout the valley. And if you haven't been to any of those, I would encourage you to get involved in them in some way, just to learn more. Okay, so if you are a restaurant, how can you be more autism friendly? I want to go back to that point that we had about the percentage of individuals who wander. And so 39% of individuals engage in wandering elopement during transitions or stress in busy environments. I'm just going to tell you from experience that a lot of times when families who have individuals with autism go out to eat, when they're brave enough to do that, these guys get away, and they get away very quickly. Girls, they get out. They know that they're in a place where they can get away really quickly. It's loud, it's bustling. There are noises that are annoying. There might be babies crying in the restaurant. Anything like that can be a trigger. But they still need to learn how to go and do this, because they may want to do this in the future. It's good for the family to be able to get out and about and do their things. So here's some things that can help or to consider. One is to have an additional host staff person when you're seating a family with autism. So you can have the one person that's ahead, if they've identified or self-identified as a family with a person with autism, one to help lead them to the table, and the other one to just follow along behind in case there's a break in rank. That is extremely helpful. Number two is to position in a corner table or along walls if there's a 6-top table, so that parents can anchor on either side, or family members can anchor on either side, or a booth where you can get them cornered into a booth so that there's less chance of an escape. If they can be seated further away from loud kitchen doors or serving activities, if you have them too close to like the server area where plates are being returned or drinks are being filled or things like that, that can just cause a lot of activity. The other thing is that our families have a lot of allergens and sensory preferences with regard to taste or smell. Parents will alert you to these things, but they may need to have something prepared a little bit differently, or they may need to inquire a little more thoroughly about the ingredients that are utilized. Some of those can be triggering, and it is, if you are a person who has a gluten issue in autism, it can move through a person very, very quickly and cause a situation. So I have allowed for Liam in the past to go ahead and have gluten-filled bread or noodles, and within 10 minutes, I am regretting that decision almost every time when we are in a restaurant. So they may need to ask you some extra questions, so please be patient with them. They will, providing them with a variety of little activities. If you have an activity coloring sheet, or if you have even something as simple as like a little battery operated candle that you can set on the table, a lot of times that little flickering light will keep their attention and help them settle down. Training your staff on how to accommodate speaking to individuals with autism, which we will talk about in a little bit. And obviously we can provide any more in-depth information on any of this if you all want to. I'm happy to volunteer my time for that. And offer to assist with departure from seating the same way that you brought them to the table. If it's time to go and the waiter has brought them their bill, then asking if they need help on the way back out while they transition is really great. Making sure to let them know where the restrooms are located when they're first seated is also very helpful. If a child gets overstimulated, a lot of times parents will bring them to the bathroom so they can go in there and take a few breaths in a quieter environment and reboot, and then come back out and go back to the table. And then another thing that you could do or consider during the month of April, which is Autism Awareness Month, is to have a restaurant practice day for local families. We did this with great success in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And just like they take kids out to help them learn how to board planes, our hotels and restaurants, probably because I was friends with some of these people, were kind enough to open their hotels and restaurants at special times for families to come in and practice coming in and sitting down at the table, and they got to share a meal with their family and not have to worry about what all was going on around them. And it gave the staff an opportunity to be a little bit more trained and raise some autism awareness there, but it also gave the families a really good time to get out. Okay. And with regard to hotels, I have a story to tell you guys about hotels too. 36% of individuals with ASD will engage in wandering or elopement between the hours of 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. and parents have to sleep. And so do grandparents. And hotels have really super easy open doors, and they have those for very good safety reasons. But it can make it really difficult when you're traveling with a person with autism. So one of the things that you guys can do, families don't always self-identify when they're checking in or ever. But if they do self-identify, it's good to make sure that on-site security is informed that the kid in 412 has autism. If they've been trained, just let them know that there's someone on site. And without any additional information that's come in, if a parent calls and says, my kid has escaped from the room to the front desk, someone should be sent to the pool area as soon as possible, and doors, exterior doors should be secured. And staff can be mobilized, either security staff or front office staff or whoever, to quickly sweep the floors, or housekeeping to quickly sweep the floors, to look for them. Make sure you look in small closets. If they are overstimulated, they have a tendency to, number one, they go for water faster than you can even imagine. Almost all cases of wandering and elopement with a lethal outcome, 80% of those cases almost wind up with an accidental drowning. And so they will go straight for water. If they don't go straight for water, they will try to find an area that is quiet and sometimes dark. So linen closets at the end of halls, or they will, if they can get behind Coke machines that are on the halls or whatever, vending machines, they will go there, or they'll even go straight for meeting rooms and try to get into there to get away. There are little temporary door and window alarms. They are not expensive. You can get them at Home Depot or Lowe's, or order them online at Amazon. The particular one that we recommend is Tosin 120 dB. They're attached by adhesive strips, so they're not going to leave a permanent issue in the room, and they attach to the door, and then there's a magnetic strip that attaches to the door jamb. And so if the door is opened, it'll alert the parent and let them know, which will help our family sleep a little bit better. When our family travels with Liam, the first thing that we would do as soon as we got into the hotel room is move a large heavy chair or the desk in front of the door, which of course is a fire safety regulation problem. But that was the only way to make sure that we were going to be able to really rest inside the hotel room. If you want to keep cool items on hand as a giveaway, they have little fidget toys, those little fidget spinners, or any little sensory toys. You can get them branded with your hotel. Some hotels are doing that now and passing them out at check-in, and parents can use them as reinforcers. And if a family self-identifies, either when they're making the reservation or when they're checking in, one of the things that would be very helpful as the front office staff is looking for room placement. If there is a room that is not facing a source of water, that is very helpful. So rooms that overlook pools, that's a bad idea. Rooms that are overlooking lovely mountain streams, also typically a bad idea. So if you know that they're going to be overlooking those things, it's a good idea to ask the family, is it okay to place you in a room like this, or would you prefer a room that's looking into town, if that's possible? You can also ask the family if they would prefer a room that's further away from the elevator. I know people sometimes they like to be close to the elevator, sometimes they like to be further away. But reducing the noise outside that's going to make a person curious to want to go outside is probably a better thing for our families. And then again, if you want to do a hotel practice to help allow local kids with autism and their families to come in and practice going through the check-in process and the waiting time and going up to the room and looking around the room and not even necessarily staying overnight, but just exploring it to check it out, that can help our families get to be more travel ready. And with this impacting as many people as it does across the United States, this is a huge market that's actually untapped. And there is plenty of good reason for families with kids with autism to travel. Liam has learned so much. He has been to 36 different states and 4 different countries. And we talked about this the other day. We asked him if he felt like he was brave enough to travel. I almost threw up when I asked him this, but I said, do you feel brave enough to get on a plane here in Tennessee and fly back to Baton Rouge to visit your family that's back in Baton Rouge? And he said, well, do I have to go through Atlanta? Which I thought was great. That was a good example of executive functioning. He knew where he was going to have to do a transfer point. And I said, yes, you would have to go through Atlanta. And he said, okay, I don't think I can do that yet. And I said, not a problem. But the fact that he was even considering it was a really big deal for me, because he probably spent the first 10 years of his life trying to escape from Alcatraz in our home. I had a different key lock on every single door that we had when we moved into our home in 2002. My dad put a different lock on every single door, including the door to the pantry, including cabinet doors in the kitchen, including the laundry room door. I look like a warden carrying around the locks, and carrying around the keys. And one morning I came downstairs to eat breakfast. I got up early, I came down, I was making coffee, and there was a bowl in the sink with a spoon. And I had totally cleaned the kitchen the night before, and I was like, this is so weird. And the next morning I came down, there's a bowl with a spoon in it. And I'm like, do we have a ghost that's running around putting bowls and spoons in what is going on? So the third night, I decided to sit in the dark on the couch and see what happened in the kitchen. And my 6-year-old son with autism, who couldn't speak and couldn't follow directions at school to stack blocks on top of each other at the teacher's request. Came downstairs, got a chair, pulled the chair over, got up on top of the kitchen counter, reached up into the cabinet, got the warden keys, climbed back down onto the chair, went over to the pantry, opened the pantry, got out a box of Cocoa Krispies, went back, climbed up on top of the counter, used the key to get in to open the plates and cut plates and bowls, gets a bowl out, goes to the refrigerator, gets his milk, makes himself some Cocoa Krispies, eats all of it, goes over to the sink, rinses the bowl out so there's no evidence of what has been eaten, puts the Cocoa Krispies back into the cabinet, into the pantry, locks it, locks the cabinet with the cups and the bowls and the plates, hangs it back up on the key, puts the chair away, and the only evidence of the crime, the only reason that he didn't get away with his crime was that he had left a rinsed bowl with a spoon in the sink. And I thought, what am I supposed to do with this? We've literally been in this house for a week, and he knows which key goes where. It wasn't any fumbling. He knew exactly what to do. He knew exactly how to punch the code to get out of our house when he was 6. It didn't matter how many times I changed it. He memorized the sounds on the code, and he knew how to do the code to get in and out of the house. So these kids, we want our parents and caregivers to learn how to work with the kids, and our schools and our clinicians to work with the kids to help make them safe, because they learn so much from traveling, and it brings them such incredible joy to be able to do that, just like it does with anybody else. You learn stuff when you go places, they learn stuff when they go places. I have had some very harrowing, difficult trips with my kids. We lost him at SeaWorld. We had a plan. We even put him in orange. We dressed the kid in orange so we could make sure we could identify him quickly if he got away. Does he get away? 100% he gets away. I am traveling alone as a single mother with 2 kids who are 10 and 8, and my 10-year-old has run away and is lost in SeaWorld in an orange shirt. And I thought all of this time that he had eloped and run away to the dolphin exhibit, because we were using that as a way to encourage him to have good behavior. And that was not the case. And I didn't find that out until 16 years later, when we were presenting to the Colorado sheriffs, and they wanted to meet Liam and talk to them himself. And they said, your mom told us about this time that, you got away from her in SeaWorld. Can you tell us about that? And he said, I was with my mom and I turned around and there were too many people and I couldn't find her again. So I went to look at the dolphins. So it wasn't an elopement. An elopement is when they have a reason to leave and they elope and they go away. They run away as fast as they can to go pursue something that they're interested in, or to get away from something they're not interested in. Wandering is more like chasing a butterfly and winding up somewhere. And all this time I thought he had eloped. No, I just couldn't find his mom. So we learn stuff every time. I've learned stuff 16 years later to be able to tell younger parents and say, you also need to dress in orange if you're going to go out into public, so that your kid can turn around. I mean, we were in San Diego. We were in the land of the blonde-headed people. He was like, couldn't find me. All right. So that's good things to do for hotels. Here's a quick plug about the swimming pools, in case I haven't talked about the drowning incident issues enough. This is the first place to go to when an incident is reported. If it's a hotel, again, locks are almost irrelevant. If they can get into the place, they will get into it, and you may not think they can get into it, and they will go into the water fully clothed with their shoes on, which sends them right to the bottom. Their depth perception may be impaired because of their sensory perception issues. And they're at risk even if they know how to swim, likely because they have done swimming lessons without tennis shoes on. And then again, it's just a huge risk for them. So that is the first place that I would check if you are in a hotel. And if you are just in the community in general, and a person with autism elopes from your your establishment. If there is a body of water that is close by and you know that they have escaped the breach and they have made it out the doors of the facility, then that is the first place that people need to be notified to go. The good news is that we have already trained the Aspen Police Department and they know how to respond in these cases. So while you're trying to deal with mom and dad and keep them calm down, or grandma, you can easily call 911, and the Aspen police have already been trained and they know to go straight for the water and look for them. Individuals with autism, if you are trying to help them out of a situation, may or may not respond to commands that you issue to them. Those commands should be administered in short bursts, like stop, come here, slow down, not big long sentences, just short, repetitive statements that are issued kindly, because if you holler at them, that will typically send them in the other direction. What to do when an event occurs is to help prompt the family for information. If they're upset, they're going to need your direction to help make sure that you get critical information out of them if you're going to be the one assisting and calling 911. So clothing, description, picture, last known location, the last time they saw them, what their communication level is, what their favorite and least favorite subjects are. I just would like you to know that my son's favorite topic in the world right now is Ariel with the Little Mermaid, which we start talking about before I've had my first cup of coffee in the morning, and it's the last thing he says before he goes to bed at night, talking because he's very excited because the Little Mermaid is coming out with a live action film next spring. He loves to talk about Little Mermaid. If I were to walk around and say things about the Little Mermaid to try to coax him out of to look for him, he would not respond. If I say the word Jafar, who he hates, he will come from whatever area of the house he is currently located in, even if I whisper it, and tell me what he thinks about Jafar. So that's why I said, ask them what their favorite and their least favorite subjects are, because they may not come if you're talking to them about things they like, but they will definitely come out and talk to you about things they don't like. And there is we had a case that happened this spring with a kid that eloped in Los Angeles, and his mom thought about this and told the police officers that he really likes rocks, and the police, he was nonverbal, and the police picked up rocks and they were banging rocks together and saying rocks, rocks, and banging rocks together. And he found rocks where he was sitting in the woods, and he picked up his rocks and started banging them back. And so we had a really happy outcome happen in Los Angeles because of quick thinking mom and some first responders who listened to what she had to say. Your quick action steps when this happens, again, is gather information quickly from the family, call 911 first, and then activate your staff. So if you're in a hotel or a restaurant, again, water source is number one, think water. Number two, make sure any exit doors are blocked. And then number three, engage staff that is available to be able to help with sweeping the property to try to locate the person as quickly as possible. I had asked Sarah about this before. There are some communities, if you're from another community, where they ever had something called Code Adam. This is not something that we've come up with yet through Ascendigo, but or through the autism community, but I think we need to have something that's similar to this. When a Code Adam is issued in a department store or like at Home Depot, in other communities, they know to immediately close the doors and to check everyone as they're coming in and out. It's more for a case when a child has disappeared and it's a suspected kidnapping, but it would work very well in this kind of case too. Everything just shuts down and closes until the kid is located or they have cleared the establishment to be sure that, and looked at security footage to see if they've gone outside of the store. If you have security footage, and your security team someone can be reviewing that to check and see if the person has already gone out of the building while you're simultaneously doing that. That's also very helpful. All right, we are going to run out of time, and I want to be sure that you guys have time to ask any questions. We know that, so Ascendigo has this great program where they take kids with autism out to do all sorts of extreme sports, which is extremely admirable on their part. I think it's amazing. I think I would be terrified to go down a whitewater rafting experience myself, but I'm super glad that they take these kids out and they get them to experience this stuff, or going skiing. I'm not a skier because I am just not a physical activity sort of person. I would be the person who would be rolling down in a giant snowball with her arms and legs sticking out of it with the skis on. So but they take the kids out a lot, and so you may see them when you're out and about in the community. They do a really great job with it. Their staff is all trained, and they know exactly what to do, and they know exactly how they're going to handle backcountry incidents. But if you happen to be a ski resort that would like them to come and train your staff on what to do in the event that they need help, then that would be really great, and they would love to do that. I wanted to touch very quickly on fire evacuation. I don't know if any of you all have ever had to evacuate during an emergency. That seems to happen to me a lot, whether it's a hurricane or a fire or a tornado. I've been in a lot of those different things, and I was actually in a hotel that had a 12 truck response in Philadelphia a few years ago, and had to evacuate from a hotel. I was very confused. It happened in about 11:30 at night, so I had just fallen asleep, and I was just 100% dazed and confused and really out of it. So it occurred to me, in speaking to you all, if you know that you have family that is visiting with you that has a person with autism, or if you're in a restaurant, knowing that they might need some extra assistance. A lot of times autism can be considered a hidden disability. So just in the same way that you would ensure that you help get people out of the hotel, I mean, obviously you would get everybody out, but there are people who may be traveling with you that would need additional assistance due to a physical handicap, and people who are transitioning at 11:30 at night with a person with autism would probably appreciate some help getting out of the building safely, because it can be a really chaotic situation. When you are speaking with a person with autism, again, they may or may not have an intellectual disability, and they may or may not speak. About a third of our people with autism do not communicate verbally, or they don't have adequate levels of expressing themselves. They also may not follow your directions. That doesn't mean that they're being belligerent. They may need a little more time to process what you're saying to them. So be patient and repeat yourself, use short phrases. And if you can use narrative language, that is very helpful. So it's just like you're telling a story about what you're doing, and you say, we are walking down the hallway. We are going into the elevator. We are going to cross the street now. Now we're walking towards the front door. Now we're going back to your hotel room, and just kind of give them a heads up on what's going on. Use kind tones. Try to smile when you're speaking. That is very helpful. Don't patronize adults with autism. They know they're adults, and they know they're not kids. And that doesn't usually work out very well for anyone. And clarify what you want them to do. So if you tell a person with autism, don't touch that, they hear touch that, and then they touch that. So if you don't want them to do something, try to frame it in a more positive flow, and they will be more inclined to do what you're asking them to do. I want to make a plug for hiring individuals with autism. So we spend a lot of time working with our guys and girls to get them job ready and independent. And they learn a lot from doing life skills, even around the house. And those life skills translate very well into jobs in the hospitality industry, which often have a lot of routine associated with them. And once they get those routines down pat, they have a tendency to become some of your most loyal, punctual employees who are dressed perfectly in their uniforms and will work for you very well for years and years and years to come. My son told me when he was 13 that he wanted to work at the same McDonald's that his dad had worked at. And I lost it because I was like, you can't be supervised by 18-year-olds who don't love you, because you will just elope and go to Florida and we'll never see you again. And I knew they were going to send him outside to probably sweep up trash and take the trash out. And again, they may not give him the full supervision that's necessary. It took us 3 years to get him job ready. I took him to 29 different McDonald's to do fake interviews. I drove him around during the summers and made him smell disgusting, overheated vanilla milkshakes and garbage cans so he wouldn't throw up when he had to have that task. We spent a lot of time working with his behavioral health treatment to help him understand that it was okay if people wanted to order a hamburger with onions on it, because he thinks onions are an abomination and no one should ever put them in their mouth. And after he got this all down pat, on his 16th birthday, he walked into a McDonald's and he filled out his own application and he did his own interview, and he started working at McDonald's, and he worked there for 8 years as their French fry guy until COVID happened, and then we took a pause, and he just got a job working at the McDonald's here in Tennessee now that we've relocated to Tennessee, and he is thrilled and happy to have his own money again so that he can buy what he wants to buy. He still likes me to spend my money, preferably so he can save his, but he has become a reluctant taxpayer like the rest of us. So, and that's what we want to see. We want to see our guys be able to get out and do that. And Ascendigo can help you with that. 1 out of 88 individuals, again, who are over the age of 21 do have autism. And so chances are you're probably hiring somebody that's on the spectrum anyway. So learning more about these really wonderful individuals who bring a lot of light and laughter into our lives. They do have challenges, but they are things that everybody can work together to overcome. And they're 100% worth having on your team. So I know we have reached the top of the hour. If anybody has any questions, I am happy to hang here and answer them. And I hope this has been helpful. We would love if you want us to come visit you or work with your team. I'm happy to help do Zooms. The people there at Ascendigo are happy to come meet with you in person, and we would love to help your frontline staff learn more about autism.
Thank you, Shelley. If you want to go ahead and exit out of the screen view, any questions from the group, you could raise your hand or put it in the chat. Happy to help facilitate any questions that you all may have. All right, I'm not seeing any hands go up. So again, thank you so much, Shelley, and the team at Ascendigo. Thank you for all the work you're doing for our community members and the broader families in our country that may be interested in traveling to Aspen. I really did like that idea of doing some practice days. So some good ideas for us to consider. We're very appreciative of your time, and thank you to all the members that joined us today. And again, we'll place this recording on our website as well for everyone. Thanks and have a great day.